would now like to invite Shivaji Chatterjee, Executive Vice President, Enterprise and Government Business Hughes Communications India, for the session keynote on the buzz around Satcom, hype, or reality. He heads all functions of the Enterprise Business Unit, encompassing various areas of sales and marketing, operations, field services, SCM, program management, and HR at Hughes. A gold medalist in computer engineering from Pune University, he did his post graduation in marketing from NMIMS in Mumbai. A career spanning of over total of 25 years, he has been with Hughes for the past 23 years, during which he has won several business and sales and marketing accolades. He has been felicitated as the International Marketing Person of the Year at Hughes USA multiple times and was also awarded Hughes CEO's Honor Award, a very special Hughes global recognition. May I invite on stage Shivaji Chatterjee.
Good afternoon. It's the first time I've come up to stage without anyone clapping their hands. So everyone, please get out from your slumber. We are talking about buzz and hype, and there's absolutely silence in this room. The desserts were also good. Space mein. Right. So the idea of, we heard from Lieutenant General Bhatt in the morning about the space regulations, how this is going to be the start of a space era in India with the formation of InSpace, New Space India. And hopefully in an hour's time, we have the Space Policy 2023 announced on the anniversary of the launch of the first satellite Aryabhat. So I think by the end of the leadership forum today, we'll have some big news which won't dwarf the coverage, I'm sure, of this. So when I was given this task, I thought that, there's been a lot of buzz around Satcom, and to put it in context globally in India, and to really see that, how much is hype, what is real. And as Hughes India, we've been serving the country for close to 30 years. This is my 26th year in the company and this industry. And hence we have a fairly good idea as to, what's real and what's probably hopeful. So there's no doubt globally there's a huge buzz. I've been going to global industry events and seeing what's been happening lately, the amount of activity, the new entrants, the kind of people, diversified industries that it's attracting. Clearly something's going on. So it's dynamic, it's changing from something which was rocket science. I think the rocket science is getting translated into more basic application services which are widespread. So that mystery and the technology is as complicated as ever, if not even more. But the application of that is really changing dramatically. And I'll say that one of the big reasons is this promise of satellite constellations. It's like a telecom network which can blanket the world. Arthur C. Clarke, maybe about 80 years back, came up with this hypothesis that if you put 3 satellites geostationary 120 degrees apart in space, it can cover the world and can actually enable anyone to anyone communication. And that was actually the first concept of the internet. Today, this is happening, but mixing what is the ground-based telecom network concept, taking kind of point of presence, satellites, BTS and eNote B concepts, and putting them just between space and Earth in these massive constellations which are forming all across the world. So it's truly transformational. All my career in satellite, we've always told that capacity is less, cost per bandwidth is high, and latency will always be there. Now, those norms are changing. When the satellite, instead of being 36,000 kilometers, is at 600 kilometers, latency is coming down 60 times. So you're talking of latencies which are under 50 milliseconds, which is very much like a terrestrial network end to end latency. You're talking of coverage everywhere, land, air, water, with the same level of service, unheard of. Today, if you go within Delhi, you'll not get the same level of service from one place to another, except for one service, DTH. You'll get the same satellite service anywhere in the country and with the same level, whether it's rural, urban, wherever you are, because that's the beauty of satellite, homogeneity. It's very scalable because you can keep, instead of this one big satellite, you can keep adding satellites, enhance capacity. So this really is what has triggered, interest, this concept, the evolution of this technology. And when there's interest and to put up something like this, it's going to take a lot of money. And when there's money, you need billionaires. So that's what the buzz is. These billionaires have entered the satellite business in a big way and putting in their billions. They're not billionaires putting in millions, they're billionaires putting up billions of dollars. Elon Musk, Sunil Mittal, Jeff Bezos. These are big, big players, and now these companies are soon becoming common names to the enterprise, and in many parts of the world, even household brand names, Starlink, OneWeb, and Amazon Kuiper. So that's really what has gathered the buzz. Anything the big guys do, there's always buzz because they're in it to make it work and to deliver services and to make money. And a lot of money has been invested, whether it's OneWeb, Amazon Kuiper, Starlink, Telesat, huge investments in billions of dollars, unheard of. Satellites used to cost 100, $200 million. An operator would put it up once every few years, and then that would be the progression. Suddenly, you have constellations of thousands of satellites with billions of dollars being put up. And hence, there's a big investment which is happening. And again, that's got all the buzz and all the financial community analysts excited. And just to kind of put it in perspective, because this is a diversified audience, LEO, we are talking of 600 to 1200 kilometers. Medium Earth orbit, which is MEO, is 10,000 kilometers. And geostationary is around 36,000 kilometers. So these are the three kind of layers of constellations. Geostationary has been the concept all along, serving a same geography. With LEO or MEO, the minute you come below geo, the satellite will rotate faster than the Earth's surface, which means you lose coverage. And the only way to have service continuity is to have another satellite come up in its place. Much like if you're on the car going between from one place to another, you need your mobile signal to hand over to the next E node B. It's very similar. And what has been the transformation is this concept of high throughput satellite technology. Just like we've learned from the cellular industry, instead of using a frequency only once, you reuse the frequency by creating cells. And that's why today 100 megahertz of cellular frequency can provide terabits of service and hundreds of terabits of service across the country by reusing the frequency into cells. Similarly, high throughput satellite is that. Instead of one beam being broadcast, which was made for television, everyone gets the same content every time. For data, everyone has their own unique content at any particular time. And hence, the frequency reuse is started with small satellites, high throughput satellites. VHTS is very high throughput satellites. And now these non geo constellations, which again do hundreds and thousands of satellites with high throughput together. So, all in all, you have satellites which traditionally used to only give under a gigabits of capacity. Now you're talking of multi terabits of capacity coming per satellite constellation and concept. If we now look at what makes this the next level of buzz, it's not just that you put the constellation down, because it's like the whole mobile concept. When you moved from landline to mobile, it was a revolution change. You could just take your phone and be on the move and still have connectivity. So this is something as breakthrough, that you have satellites which are on the move, and they're able to cater to fixed or on the move ground segments. and now to build this ecosystem together, you have a huge advantage. Of course, latency is coming down as a user benefit, but you also have the satellite much closer to the Earth. When the satellites are closer to the Earth, the link budget becomes very easy. So you can have smaller terminals. VSATs were called very small aperture terminals because till they happened, there were only Earth stations, which were many meters big. So to talk to a satellite 36,000 kilometers in the sky, you needed Earth stations which were 8, 10 meters. VSAT was the first way to bring it down to 1.2, 1.8 meters. That's why it was called very small aperture terminal. And now you're talking of much smaller size, the size of a laptop as a terminal. And that's the revolution in making satellites which are just 50 kilos, 100 kilos. So it couldn't be thought of. Satellites used to be weighing in tons. So now you have satellites which are made, many of them made in a day in a factory line. Again, this was all rocket science. How is it becoming so commercialized and how easy and standardized? But that's what scale brings to the table. Bring coverage everywhere and a global constellation. And I think that's the dream, that to be able to serve everyone in the world with the same service, same technology anywhere, and launching at the same time. So that's really the promise. And I'll just run through a small video of 90 seconds on the OneWeb, just as an example as to what, it's almost like a miracle to see how it's all coming together. So if we can also have the sound, I'll just play the video. So the other revolution, a VSAT with no dish. VSAT was meant to be small aperture terminals. We've seen the DTH dishes, which are small. But now we're talking of a revolution. On the left is the OneWeb dish, in the middle is the Kuiper dish, and on the right is the Starlink dish. These are already, the Kuiper one is a prototype, but the others are in service. We're talking of a laptop folded down as the terminal. That's it. There's no pointing, there's no complexity, there's no footprint, there's no power required, just basic power over Ethernet, and you're ready to go. So, again, that's the buzz. It's the whole ecosystem coming together. And with OneWeb, the service will be live soon. The plan is definitely by the end of this year. There are two gateways in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, national coverage, 100 megabits speeds per site, low latency, focuses on the B2B market with high QoS, jitter, low latency deliverables. And definitely, I think for the government, disaster management, the defense, it's really going to be a revolution as they can do with something strategic and in full control. Hughes has done a lot of work with OneWeb as a part investor, making the entire technology on the ground, the satellite dish you saw, the modem, the gateways are made by Hughes. We are taking this globally. In India, we are the exclusive distributor and the antenna manufacturer too. And while you have this buzz on the global constellations, you have the existing Satcom operators and majors doubling down on their core business. So it's not that it's only about constellations. The next dimension is what is, I think, companies like SES, Viasat, Hughes, Intelsat, Telesat, Inmarsat, all of them making big investments around geostationary satellites. And that's because that evolution has happened multifold. Theoretically, these satellites used to give frequency reuse 4 beams, 8 beams. Today, they're already giving 300 to 500 beams, which means the same capex is able to give 300 times the capacity it used to give 10 years back with one beam. As the technology hardware evolves, if 300 becomes 3000 beams from a satellite, it's like creating a cellular network from the sky using geostationary satellites with very fixed footprint, very good for broadband. That's what VHTS satellites are. The other big thing which is happening, the whole software defined network and technology is going on the satellites. So no longer is the capacity fixed to a location. You can always change it dynamically, configure the beams to where the demand is. For example, today there's a big project by the USO to connect the Naxal areas in the country called the left wing extremists, because those are underserved areas, there's no mobile coverage, there's a big need of bandwidth. Maybe once it's covered, someday those forests you may get some fiber or microwave in. You may not need that kind of satellite capacity. You can redeploy it somewhere else. Or in Lakshadweep today, there's no fiber and is dependent on satellite. When, say, undersea fiber gets laid out there, maybe you could redeploy the capacity somewhere else. So that's what the promise of software defined satellites, it just changes the business case. And the Hughes Jupiter system, which is the ground technology, has really built satellites, has built the ground segment for software defined satellites, HTS and VHTS satellites, and this is live in India. And third, and possibly the area which is the biggest buzz, is the direct satellite to device promise. That we all know about satellite phones, right? They're big, clunky, they don't have connectivity unless you go in a very clear sky. They're very expensive. They're, can't be used by consumers. It's for very strategic use. But what is changing, and in this forum, possibly where the convergence is happening, is the whole 5G ecosystem has brought together a convergence of technologies, and it's the first time, satellite and is included into the terrestrial and wireless fold. The 3GPP release 17 as a standard has brought this even more. Satcom is included, and now the chips by Qualcomm, MediaTek, they all have the satellite uh, chips inside the default phones, which we'll start having. And soon, as the service goes live, and I'll come to that, you're seeing that. There are different kinds of business models. Companies like T-Mobile in the US, Global Star, they're partnering with big manufacturers to really create solutions with Starlink, with Apple, to use the shared spectrum which a MNO has today for satellite by reusing it. There are also dedicated satellite constellations going up with MSS S-band capacity, which is 2 to 4 gigahertz, only catering to the direct-to-device and IoT market. So very, very interesting developments. And you have a lot of companies which have come up and getting huge valuations, because I think this is seen as an alternate for a mobile phone to connect to the satellite and get coverage anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, and it offers an alternate and has a business case. All these companies have made big plays into this. It's a very new area, and it will still have to play out over the next few years, but it has created a huge amount of buzz. In the latest iPhone 14 launch, just this feature of emergency satellite based SOS created the most news out of all the Apple 14 release features, because it was new, it offered something different. And this is the projected kind of increase which is forecasted over the next 7 years, something which doesn't exist today. We are talking of it going to over 400 million phones in the next 7 years. So it's definitely very exciting, a big promise. When we come to India, again, I think this global buzz has created buzz within the country. There's all the big names which I mentioned at the beginning, all have come, made announcements, satellite broadband, whether it can create, an alternate, whether it can be something which beats wireless terrestrial, we'll come to that. But all those kind of, news is there. OneWeb launching satellites, Elon Musk coming into the country. Last year, 7 months back, we launched our national HTS service in India along with ISRO. It was launched by the chairman ISRO, and this service is live. It's already servicing. We had sold hardly 1 gigabit of capacity in 25 years. In the last 6 months, we've sold 2 to 3 gigabits of this service, and it just shows that if there's bandwidth and affordable and with a good experience, there is a good market for it. This got a lot of press. Nelco did a test on Telesat for the first LEO. It was a brief test when the satellite was flying over India. It again showed a promise that yes, this is something which is possible. We have OneWeb satellites which have had two successful launches by ISRO of 36 satellites each in October and in March. And that definitely has added a lot of, again, buzz that ISRO is able to launch satellites, for third parties. And OneWeb was able to complete its constellation globally with these two ISRO satellite launches. So how much is hype and how much is reality? I'll say if we really look at it, there is a market opportunity. India has been starved of capacity. There is no doubt. There's been very less capacity. They were available at high costs, and hence the addressable market, only those who really needed it, could afford it, could get it. But it was a niche set. The pricing was not up to the mark. And in India, if you don't give a value for money proposition, you won't have an offtake. The Geo HTS capacity, which is we've seen as the game changer, it's been available in the world for the last 10 years, is not available here. Today, what is forcing the space reform and policy is people don't want to wait for OneWeb or Starlink for another 5 years. They say, if this is the latest available, we want it here. If 5G is there in the world, we want it here. Unlike 3G and 4G, where India came much later, in 5G, the demand would be too high that you can't today delay services in the Indian market to the Indian consumers, not with the way the aspirations and the government really action is. So there's a big demand, no doubt. It is latent because the supply has just started coming, and the need for multi-megabit services, the government's Digital India programs of connecting schools, connecting villages, getting USO 4G coverage to all villages, getting Wi-Fi and FTTH to every village home in the country, telehealth. There's a lot of programs which are out there. And the Space Policy 23 is going to bind all this together into a long, long awaited policy, which is going to pave the way for private participation in the country. So if we see where we've been working, it's very niche. A little bit in ATMs, backup, rural networks because there's no terrestrial, strategic networks for the armed forces, and mobility, which has just started with the license which was given 2 years back. So these are the markets which are there today. But as we see, these markets are going to evolve. We are going to get into satellite broadband to the home. We're going to get into 4G, 5G backhauling, Wi-Fi backhauling with more capacity available, and Wi-Fi on the planes, on the trains, in the ships, cruises, yachts. So it's going to really be an evolution in multiple ways, and that's where this capacity is going to go. There are many ITU and national broadband initiatives which are there, which really look at enhancing the broadband, and we all know the GDP linkage to the broadband, and we really see all this is creating multiple opportunities for satellite. How it has to be done is going to be a challenge, and we'll come to that. To reach to the rural home, which is the biggest way to have inclusion, it's either broadband to the roof, Wi-Fi or FTTH through backhauls, or a mobile. Today, the government's plan is to have, under the BharatNet, to have a backhaul for Wi-Fi or FTTH to every village, and through the operators like Jio, Airtel, and BSNL, to have 4G in every village. So two forms of connectivity to every rural home, one through broadband and other through mobile broadband. And what really this service is going to help give is connectivity across the board. Today, a lot of financial inclusion is dependent on satellite, but again, starved of bandwidth. There are many times in the kbps world, whereas the need is mbps. So, just to come to the final leg, it's the dose of reality that while that demand is there, it's latent. It's not easy. Let's look at the VSAT market. There used to be like the mobile market. There used to be 10, 12 players active. Today there are really 3 players, and out of which 2 are really active and growing. So the reason is there is less capacity. The growth opportunities till now are very limited, and our competition is not with each other, it's with the terrestrial, which is expanding all the time. If we look at the growth in terms of number of VSATs, you can see at different stages since 95, when the telecom licenses were given, the VSAT kept growing over the first 15 to 20 years, right? Till about here. What's happened in the last 7, 8 years? It's absolutely been a plateau. And that's because of the lack of capacity, the tremendous surge in 4G, MPLS, wireless MPLS available, and lack of strong reform on the satellite and space side. So it's definitely not a trend which is in line with all the buzz and the hype, right? The terrestrial reach has kept spreading. The USO projects are, even in the unconnected villages, demand more than 90 to 95% of those unconnected sites to be on fiber or microwave. So, what's left even for unconnected villages in India? So, the 40,000 unconnected villages, which will say, oh, if they're not unconnected after everything Jio and Airtel have done and BSNL has done, they may be for satellite. Less than 5% is going on satellite. So we must be cognizant that the default way the government is pushing connectivity is through fiber connectivity to the home, to the village, and that is creating a certain infrastructure. If you just see, I took this off the Geo, website. Its presence is pretty much, except for those some pockets which are mainly the densely forested areas and some of the extreme hilly areas, is pretty much all over the country. And probably geographically the reach is over 90-95%. And Pratik may know, maybe population wise it's over 95%. So that's a tremendous reach which is there of the terrestrial network. The other challenge is, even if there's no other connectivity, in those areas, are you able to provide an affordability? They say the thumb rule is broadband has to be less than 5% of the household income. So can you close that business case with satellite, with a megabit service, and meet that kind of price point expectation? And already in India, you have pretty low mobile internet prices. We all know, we've all, as consumers, enjoyed the benefit of falling cellular bills or getting more for less. And broadband with the wireless ISPs, again, the prices per GB are down so low. And of course, Wi-Fi is free in the country. So on top of that, the third dose of reality is, what we spoke about: spectrum auction, assignment. A lot of time the buzz is created so much that you feel that this is going to be as big as the mobile market. I don't think it can even be 1% of the mobile market. And in that sense, you can't have spectrum being bid by an operator which has a market access for that spectrum, which may be 100 or 200 times the revenue potential. It's important to stay balanced. And what is a new industry in the country to help bring that up by having a balanced kind of playing field, keeping these factors in mind. So, really, the reality is there is an opportunity, but there are many challenges. There's competition in the form of terrestrial, there's the affordability issue, and there's a market which is always shifting in terms of the addressable market. And at the other end, there is this technologies, there's a capacity, there are different solutions coming in. So it's going to be a perfect storm. And I think in the next few years, it's going to play out. And it'll really be about who survives. And I really feel in this, in India, the innovation, how you come up with the right business model, the incumbency of knowing and understanding your customer and the market is very important. Whether it's enterprise or consumer, it's mainly about that. It's about knowing your market so that you don't go by the hype. And even today, I read reports in India, 75% of the citizens don't have access to broadband. For those, go and find those 75%. I think if they should be 3 out of every 4, but you won't find 1 out of 100. So that's the reality. So in summary, this hype versus reality, I've tried to kind of show this Gartner chart, which, there's always a trigger of technology innovation, there's a hype, there's a lot of inflated expectations. Then as the reality sets in, there's some disillusionment as it's a correction of expectations. And then you start getting, into what is real, and then there's a plateau of productivity. If you see some of the things I spoke together, the geo market is known, and I think that is really reached the right understanding of what's there, and that is very productive. Things like direct to device, space policy are new. There's a lot of hype around it. Let it play out, and the expectations have to be corrected. With Leo, the services have started. The hype is less than it was a year back, but I think there still has to be a lot of correction to understand that at the end of the day, it's just a technology, it's addressing a market, and at the end of the business case is going to count for everything. I'm still bullish. The hype and reality, when we look at India, we have current Satcom areas and new areas. There are many new growing areas which keep us excited. And with the supply, with the products, with the regulatory changes happening, I think there's no doubt it's very bullish. and it's how the players run the market which will define how successful we are. Thank you.